My number one goal in life is not to get a kidney stone.
That's a good goal because those are painful.
How do we feel about that as the intro to the Be Well Now podcast as I sip on coffee? Nick the Curious Patient.
And I'm Dr. Dummar.
Dr. Ron Dummar in Heber City, Utah. We were talking about a topic, again, as I drink coffee and talk about kidney stones. Hydration. It's underrated. It's probably over-influential in how we feel. Can you explain why it's so important?
Yeah, I don't think we talk enough about hydration, or we don't understand it or value it enough. And the reality is probably it's so prevalent. We have water everywhere. We feel that way, right? At least in our modern society. We can get sodas from a fountain drink anywhere we go. We can get all sorts of liquid beverages. The reality is we think we're hydrating ourselves when we're doing that, but most of those sugary type of substances, especially if they have a stimulant in them, are dehydrating us, not hydrating us. So hydration is super, super important because of, the basic nature of the way the cell function is dependent on having an appropriate balance of fluids in the body. So if you have a deficient amount of fluids, you can have accruing minerals, right? Or they'll start, just like if you see a rushing river, it's just, the water's just flowing down. And then in the summertime, maybe that river, or the late summer, it gets a little bit lower. And then you see on the side, there are these eddies that start to form. And they become, you look in it, and it looks like a lot of silt, sand or mud, and it starts to form. And then the less and less fluid that's built up there, the more it congeals and gets sticky and boggy. That same type of thing can happen in your body.
Is that what we're talking about with kidney stones?
With kidney stones,
I started off a little bit
minerals.
Started off a little bit silly there, but what is happening there?
So kidney stone is the most common formation is a calcium oxalate combination, where calcium oxalate, essentially it binds together. It's a grouping of minerals that come together, and it binds together and forms a stone, a hard little sand, grainy-like thing. But when you're trying to push that through the cells of your body, it becomes really painful. And if you've ever spoken to anyone who's had a kidney stone, we get a number of these because people will often have low back, flank type of pain, and they're painful. It's one of the most painful things a person can experience is a kidney stone.
So how do you prevent something like that, and what are the chances that there's already a lot of that accumulation in your body? Can it be reversed?
Right. So accumulation, the way to reverse it is really, it's so simple, is to add water.
Just to drink more water.
Drink water.
Is that how simple this whole thing is?
Yeah.
Who knew?
It's pretty simple. But really, then it comes down to, okay, well, what's my fluid intake? Right. So when we say water, we actually mean water. So drink water. Not a lot of people get into the habit of, I drank milk after my athletics, right? So you perform a sport. You're playing out in the sun, you're sweating, you're losing a lot of water. And you're losing a lot of certain minerals too. And so if you're losing certain minerals, other minerals might be becoming a higher ratio within the body and within the serum of the body. So you have to make sure that is balanced out by putting more water in. But oftentimes people will do like a after workout drink, which is loaded with milk or other different things, or even stimulants, and they don't drink water because they're not thirsty anymore. So water really is the key. It's the key for us to consume if we want to stay hydrated.
More so than coconut water, Pedialyte, Gatorade. Is there any substitute for water in those drinks that, whether healthy or kind of healthy but have sugar, promise electrolytes?
Well, you bring up a good point, because hydration is not entirely just about water. I focused a lot on water. You can get a lot. When you eat, you should think about hydration too. And this is one of the ways to help your hydration. So think about the foods that you consume and the water content that they deliver to your body. Okay? So fruit is going to deliver a lot more water content to your body. It carries a lot more water.
You can feel it when you eat watermelon or even an apple. You're like, oh, there's some liquid in here.
Yeah. Well, especially watermelon, right? It seems like mostly water.
Watermelon.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm self-loathing as I drink every sip of coffee and feel myself withering away.
Well, you're getting yourself going in the morning, but you drink copious amounts of water throughout the day.
How much water am I supposed to drink? I know we're circling back around and going from topic to topic here, but like, it's annoying, man. Am I going to carry around a big jug? Like, how do I do this? What do you tell your patients who you obviously can tell hydration's an issue? You obviously want to meet people where they're at, and you obviously want to help them do the thing that's going to work. Yeah. So what's your advice to people?
Well, first of all, you have to know whether you're hydrated or not, right? And there are a number of things that you can do or that you can feel to tell that. It's important to recognize, first of all, that your brain and your heart actually they're made up of about 75% water. Okay? 75% of those organs and that neurology that functions and sends signals throughout your entire body is water. Your bones, probably about 30% water. But your kidney is about 75% also. But your lungs, guess how much water is making up
100%.
Yes, it's all water. 83 to 85%.
Okay.
That seems a little nutty, right? 83 to 85% of the makeup of your lungs is actually water.
So if you just told me the body is mostly water, which I'd heard before, that's about all that my brain would need to like understand. I keep going back to like my baseline is most people have to be dehydrated, or am I wrong?
Yeah. Well, most people are dehydrated, period, in some area of their body, right? And a lot of our organic dysfunctions occur because of dehydration, because we're not getting the appropriate mineral delivery or nutrient delivery because we have a hydration reduction problem. So how much water should I be drinking? And this is water. When I say water, I mean water. And it really should be half your body weight of it. Let's see, half your body weight in liters of water a day.
So if I'm, let's say, 200 pounds, do the math for me.
So if you're
not, but I'm just trying to come up with an even number.
So if you're 200 pounds, it's 100. You're going to drink 100. My brain is checking on this right now too, because I'm thinking
100 liters sounds like
it's got to be milliliters.
Milliliters.
It's milliliters. Thank you, because liters is too much. It's milliliters. So it would be 100 milliliters that you would drink if you weighed 200 pounds. So for a typical person who weighs 160 pounds, they would drink 80 milliliters of water in a day.
What is that gallon-wise?
So if you look at your typical, your typical water bottle that people carry throughout everywhere, it's like 16 milliliters. So you get about 16 milliliters there. So you take 4 or 5 of those in a day, and you should be hydrated. Now, that's without participation in physical activity, without copious amounts of sweat. Say if you're in the mid-summer heat and you're losing a lot of sweat, you're losing a lot of water. We lose far more water than we recognize just by naturally sweating throughout the day. I went on a camping trip once. I used to actually run wilderness survival trips for people, therapeutic wilderness survival trips. And before I was running them, I actually participated in one. And I had my little mat, and I had a poncho that I wrapped around me for the day because we didn't have a tent or anything. So I just had a poncho, and I snapped it along the sides. And during the night as I was sleeping, the top of the poncho, which really was kind of my hoodie, it flipped up over my head. And so I was breathing. I was even just expiration, just breathing, right? I woke up in the morning and I swore it had rained. I was soaked. I was covered. There was condensation. There was water everywhere. I couldn't believe it, how wet I was, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, that was literally just from breathing.
You were expiring?
Yes. So inhaling and exhaling alone was exchanging water molecules, right? So I was releasing so many water molecules into the environment. And my point for saying that is it really made me think of, oh my gosh, here I am in this dry, arid environment, which I was camping at that time. And I was covered in water in the morning because at some point during the night, it flipped up over my head and I didn't even recognize it. But just that expiration, right? Just the breathing out alone created all of this water on the inner lining of my poncho.
Is that sort of physical proof of what happens when you get a little dehydrated by the time you've woken up, and that's a good time to drink water?
Yeah, so you wake up, you usually will be dehydrated. One, because oftentimes people sweat in their sleep, especially if they're covered, right? If they have a number of covers over them, they'll often sweat. They'll perspire in their sleep, but also because you're breathing numerous times. And think again, that breath comes out of your lungs, which is made up of how much water? 83% of the lungs is water. So if our body's constantly trying to say, "Ooh, we got to keep that at 83%, we got to keep that at 83%, where are we pulling water from to try to balance our system and keep the lungs in a healthy supply of water as we're constantly breathing it out? So in the morning, I need to make sure one of the first things I do is consume water.
How much?
I would say at least 16 ounces of water in the morning.
Right away?
Yeah.
What's your routine?
First thing. My routine is I like to use a little bit of lemon water or a little lemon. Sometimes I'll even use a lemon juice if I don't have a fresh lemon. And sometimes I won't use lemon at all. But I like to at least have a large 16 ounces of water first thing in the morning.
I imagine that if it's cold, it's going to be different if it's room temperature. Do you have a preference there?
Yeah, so temperature, that's a really good question. Temperature makes a big difference. Think about what we're aiming to do in the morning, especially if we're drinking fluid in the morning. What is it we're aiming to do? What we're trying to do is initiate the processes of the body to begin the capacity to exchange nutrients, to receive nutrients, because we're about ready to fuel it, right? We're going to fuel it with food. So if I dump in fluid that is super cold, then my body has to work to try to warm the temperature up and warm my stomach and the contents of the stomach up so that it can have the production of acid at the appropriate amount so that we can actually start to bring to fore essentially the ability to break down those foods. So if we actually have if we have like a hot tea or warm liquids in the morning, it's actually beneficial. So a lot of people like to drink tea, like to start the morning with tea or coffee. The temperature of that is actually a beneficial thing for digestion. The tannins in coffee are they're a little problematic. And I would say with those type of drinks, tea and coffee, just make sure that you're really sourcing them from good quality places, right? Organic, naturally grown, people that are not using pesticides or herbicides in their growing processes, because you don't need any of those extra toxic exposures to chemicals in your day. You certainly don't want to start your morning that way. So having even if you don't drink tea or coffee, even just taking water and having it warm, like drinking some warm water as opposed to cold water with ice cubes first thing in the morning, would be really beneficial to rev up those digestive juices, really get the body going and ready to absorb nutrients when you eat.
What about just lukewarm if it's sitting in a water pitcher on the counter?
That's fine.
Better than ice cold?
I would say, especially in the morning, yes. It depends on what you're aiming to do, right? Am I aiming to cool myself down and usually that's going to be in the afternoon to later evening, things like that. Yeah, have a cooler drink. That's fine, right? But if your focus is really digestion, to improve your digestion, and to get your body ready for the day, ultimately that's going to be a warm drink. Right?
So you could have warmer,
room temperature is
room
fine.
temperature. And what utility does the lemon provide? I've heard of lemon and apple cider vinegar in the morning.
Yeah, so lemon is really interesting because it actually initiates an alkaline state in the body. So people look at lemon and they go, "Oh, lemon's acidic. It's an acid." And well, sure, there's some acidity to lemon for sure, but it actually elicits an alkaline state in our blood, in our body. One of the things that we've noticed with the production of stones, going back to kidney stones, is that lemon, or creating an alkaline or anti-inflammatory state in the body, actually reduces the likelihood of the production of kidney stones. And so if we see, let's say you're looking at your labs and you see that your carbon dioxide is actually low, well, this is a sign that perhaps you have more of an acidic state, or you're moving towards an acidic state in the blood, because carbon dioxide in the blood actually functions like a base, or like bicarbonate, which is sodium bicarbonate, or baking soda is what we know it as, right? So that's how it functions, carbon dioxide in your blood. So if we have low amounts in a lab of carbon dioxide, it means it's likely we're in an acidic state of some sort. And if we introduce temporarily, and this is a short-term thing, but if you introduce for a few nights in a row a small amount, say an eighth to a fourth a teaspoon of bicarbonate or baking soda, last thing at night before bed, put it in some water, 8 ounces of water, and drink it, it'll bring down those acidic levels by increasing the basic levels in the blood and decrease inflammation as well.
Decreasing inflammation and helping with hydration.
And reducing the likelihood of the development of kidney stones.
Which was my life goal, number one. Good times. What seasonality do you notice in terms of dehydration? Because I always feel like in the wintertime, you don't think you're dehydrated, you think you're not sweating. Can we talk about the seasons and how we might adjust our mentality or our water intake?
Yeah, so tends to be easier for people to drink more fluids in the summertime because they're hotter. Literally, the first thing, if you feel thirsty, you're dehydrated, right? So if you can have some water before you feel thirsty, that's ideal. Now, there is such a thing too as overdoing water, but most of us are not at that point, so we'll discuss that at another time, right?
I look at it almost like if you're in a meditative zone and you're meditating all the time and you're like, it all is how it is. And people are like, well, then you're going to be a floor mat and you're just going to like not have any agency. You're not going to do anything in the world. You're just going to let things happen to you. And it's like, I could see that extreme. But most of us are so far on the other side of the spectrum, we could use way more dosage of this and it's not going to take over. I feel like that's the same with like, I wouldn't worry so much about too much water because it's probably pretty rare.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Well, right now it is. And majority of us are dehydrated. And often that comes because we choose a Coke, or we choose a Pepsi, or we choose a Dr. Pepper or Mountain Dew as a means of cooling ourselves down, right? We feel thirsty and we drink sugar and stimulant. And that dehydrates us further. So the reality is most of us walk around the majority of the time dehydrated. And if we feel thirsty, we're dehydrated. So what should we reach for? Water. Then if you want to enjoy a soda, sure, that's fine. But make sure that you've gotten water into your system in liquid water form, H2O, without all of the other sugars, right? And without all the other additives and stimulants. Just get water. Get water in.
I love how you're like, if you want a soda and you've done all the other things, okay. Because we're talking about the real world where people are going to do whatever they want to do despite, let's do organic and all the perfect things. People do what they do. You know this. You work with patients. All right, I'm going to delve into controversial territory. A lot of people drink coffee. Now, you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You don't drink coffee. I see people drinking copious amounts of soda.
Yeah.
I drink energy drinks too. I think that is across the spectrum. Does one lead to more dehydration than the other if folks are sipping down their coffees versus lots of soda? So I didn't really mean that about different groupings, but there's a lot of folks who drink soda here and they don't drink coffee. And I'm wondering, do you see differences in dehydration or generally how that all plays out?
I think one of the great challenges in that regard for the church that you mentioned, or for people who are members of the church, is to recognize that that there's a pretty significant equivalency there. However, I think for those who are not members of the church, it's important to recognize as well that the faith that those individuals are exercising is essentially doing what they were asked, right? So there is also a very significant benefit there. So I'm kind of caught in the middle because I absolutely see this. You're drinking sugar, you're drinking stimulants, you're drinking food dyes and additives, and it drives me batty, you know. And then we sit there and we say, "Oh, but we don't drink coffee," and I'm like, "And you think that's doing you any good, right?" Well, sure, it's doing you good in the fact that you spiritually or ethereally decided to be committed to a set of rules or restrictions that are benefiting you in some way. That's great. But on the flip side, you're completely destroying your health by consuming something that's equally as bad, right? And it's like, it's just a stimulant and lots of sugar and lots of dyes as well. But there wasn't a specific rule written about it, so, well, why should we stay away from it? What's happening within discussions of the church is I do hear a lot of people beginning to step up and make that call as far as, hey, you guys, this word of wisdom that we have is more about wisdom than it is about the word, right? So yes, the word said tea and coffee.
But there were no energy drinks I don't know when the word...
Yeah, well, coffee and tea were the energy drinks.
Right. And again, people do what they're going to do. They've sought out stimulants for all of time, and being a part of any sort of faith does not make them the face of a faith. They're not the problem. There's nothing wrong with these people who choose not to drink coffee because they think that's part of the... And know that it's part of their faith, and like you said, that's very good for them spiritually. So it's not an attack on any one person. I just see it as a big picture, a very interesting, and you're smart enough to be like, yes, I know these aren't good for me.
Yeah, and
I know energy drinks, sugar's not good for me.
People know it.
But like here in Utah, we have all these fancy soda places like Swig.
And they are busy all the time.
Every time you drive by, and these are the places that combine Mountain Dew and Coke and flavoring, and it's like they are busy all the time. People are seeking out stimulants. They have for the eons, and whether it's good or bad, people do it.
Yeah. And so have a self-check. Really, when it comes down to it, it's individual discipline, right? Individual, how are you going to regulate your own health? And what are you going to place in your own body? And what means are you going to use to suggest that those are in your best benefit, right? So are you using research, or are you going to use whatever your doctor says? Or are you going to go out there and just say, you know what, whatever happens to be in and cool, I'm going to do that. So I would suggest finding somebody who you think is healthy, who you look at and you go, it looks like they live a pretty good, healthy life, and ask them what they do. And then if it seems like those parameters add up for you, if that makes sense to you, go, okay, maybe I'll add something there. Make a little change, right? I wouldn't say divorce everything you're doing and then do exactly what they're doing, but see if you can find one or two things from what you found they're doing that sounds beneficial to you, and it sounds possible for you to implement into your life. Because we all have different situations in life. We can't all live the same. We don't all live the same, and certain practices that I upkeep and modes, my daily routines, aren't going to be the same that work for somebody else. So what I would say is look around for those people that you think are healthy, or that are achieving or aiming to be healthy. Listen to what they have to say and what they think is healthy, and then make your own judgment and see if you can take one or two things from them and implement it into your own practice.
Two things. Number one, coffee is not just black coffee. People throw all kinds of sugar for frappuccinos. So there's no way I'm going to say that's like bereft of things that are bad for you. Number two, tips we can take away. So you mentioned one or two things. What are one or two things that we could do right now to end this podcast to stay more hydrated? How can I improve my life today? Mr. Ron Dummar, the doctor, the Heber healer.
So one thing to do to improve your hydration is to actually have mineralization, like minerals with your hydration. So one of the big things when Gatorade came on the scene was they studied, okay, we want to study the urine to see what they're losing, and then we're going to put that in our drink, right? Not that they were putting urine in the drink, but that they were putting those electrolytes or those minerals that they were excreting in copious amounts and including that in the drink, right? The problem where Gatorade went off the rails a little bit is that they include, if you look at a Gatorade bottle, and sorry Gatorade, but it's 24 to 34 grams of sugar. Okay, well, that's a problem because that amount of sugar spiking the insulin is actually hard on the kidneys as well. So that impedes some of your filtration process. So I would say mineralization, drink straight water, use maybe minerals, like you can get little mineral drops. They have a company here from Redmond, and they make a nice mineral, a balanced salt even.
You might know them as Real Salt. I feel like that's a brand that a lot of people may
Real
know.
Salt, yeah.
Real Salt, if you Google that, it's made by a company named Redmond or Redmonds, and they're based out of Utah.
And then there's another company that takes and extracts nutrients from the Great Salt Lake called Bonneville. And they have a little bottle of liquid drops that you could put a couple drops in your water, and you could make sure your mineral balance is up to par. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing I would say is to include the lemon. I think when you go to a restaurant, anywhere you go, ask for a little slice of lemon. It's very simple. It's something that most everybody will include and allow, and just squeeze a little lemon into your drink.
At all times of the day, are you encouraging lemon water?
I do at all times of the day.
So what if I
but
just
especially first thing in the morning. That's when it's most important.
What if I just drink lemon water?
If you just drink lemon water, you mean like lemonade?
No sugar. Just drop lemons in every glass of water I have. Is that bad?
That's great.
Okay,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you're not gonna have a problem with that. Then the lemon again will help with alkalining. It creates more of an alkaline state.
Do I need water filters? Do I need smart water? Do I need tap water? Lay me
so
some wisdom here.
This would be testing your water. I have a guy here. Oh, I have the.
I'm not going to test my water. Come on,
But
I'm in the
get
real
your
world.
water tested.
Get my water tested.
I've had patients where iron levels, mineral levels are way out of whack, and we send over my guy Brian Leclerc.
We should get him on the podcast.
Yeah, we should. We should talk to him about water, right? And he'll test the water for him, and you can get an idea of what the mineral concentration is, what the makeup is, and what it looks like, and then you have an idea of, should I be filtering this or not? Most of our municipal water is problematic because of chlorine and other things. Now we don't use chlorine here, and we need to get a water guy on here because I've talked to a number of them and they've said, our processes here in Heber are really good, and that we don't use necessarily a lot of chlorine in the water, which is great. We don't need that in the water, especially here high in the mountains where we are. We just use a lot of sand and clay and purify the water that way. So, but that would be a really good idea to get somebody on. I do have a water filtration system in my house. I have a system that I use and I really like. I actually had my an HVAC guy come in who also does, little water systems as well, and he designed one. He helped build one for me. So that was more of a side job that I had done. But I have filters that I buy and I get every couple of months, and I'll change the filter for the house. And
we got to get a sponsor for this podcast. We should drop the name.
I noticed a very specific change in the flavor and the taste of the water when we put the filters in.
I bought this thing from Whole Foods thinking it was all marketing. It's some alkaline filter. It got me right when I walked in.
Yeah.
Branding, marketing, product placement. It tastes so much better.
Yeah.
My 6-year-old kid probably, it's in his mind because Dad mentioned it. So anything that's in his mind, I can taste it too. But he said I can taste it 100%. I enjoy the agua de vida.
There you go. Is that what it is?
No, I just made that up. I think that's
good.
water of life, but I should stop trying to speak Spanish. I think
we're water of life, de vida.
Life.
Yeah.
I think we're at a time. I want to keep these shorter. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
more manageable,
for sure.
digestible.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of lemon in the water. Podcast.
Stay hydrated.
On video. The Be Well Now podcast, focusing on wellness and living in the present. Any final thoughts, sir?
I think that we've well saturated this discussion.
Yeah. And I am sweating profusely with wisdom.
It's seeping out of your pores now, huh? Yeah.
Goodbye. Namaste.
Namaste, everyone.
See you on the next one.